So Assassin's Creed is one of those franchises that has been around for many, many years now. This is the funny part. You got to think about it. This was like Xbox 360. Whoa, like
It was like original 360, like almost second year
Yeah, I
game
think
of the
it was
first.
yeah.
Like Assassin's Creed, the original game, it did a lot of cool things in the back in the days.
It was one of those things where it came out and it was like, hey, here's this new way of making these kind of open world games. We're going to do it. But it was, I mean, a buggy mess, which is true about all of them. It was obviously a little bit underpolished, and the story sucked, right? And what's his name? Oh, what was the guy's name?
Desmond or
no? Desmond sucked. Like again, this is the worst part of Assassin's Creed, right? Is they brought in this overarching sci-fi narrative. I think they needed to play it straighter. That's always been my biggest complaint about Assassin's Creed.
Okay, I actually enjoyed the whole overarching narrative of like
Of course you
Desmond's.
did.
No, it's more that like it had like these elements of like different gods and interacting and like how they transformed.
Jupiter and Juno and stuff like that.
Those were cool elements to how basically the Romans stole the Greek gods and just changed the names, stuff like that. Like it actually changed.
Except for the fact that Desmond had the personality of a wet frog.
Sure, but I think his character kind of came through Ezio pretty well. Like I think it kind of changed him, and you can notice that change. Ezio's change and his
But
change.
I mean, Ezio's still so number 2, which is Assassin's
The-
Creed 2.
the-
Ezio Auditore di Firenze, right? The best character in the series, hands down, and
probably the best game in the series.
Like, and there are some. This is the thing. As much as we're discussing straight away the fatigue of the series, there are some very good games in the series.
Yes.
Like I would argue 2, 4, even Brotherhood was okay.
Okay, I'd argue that Brotherhood's maybe even better than 2. Like it reached its points.
As a game, I think it's a better game, but as a story-driven experience, I don't think it's quite as good because it is more of a straightforward game. You know what I mean? Like it's more gamey. It's more of that Ubisoft too much shit to do kind of game.
There was that, but I think that I also liked the elements of like this impending doom that they actually talked about and it really built up what 3 was going to be. And then there was Revelations, and nobody played that game and nobody liked that game and nobody ever wants to talk about that game.
Yes, and let's not. So we've covered 1, and the issue. So that was the thing. 1 reminded me a lot of Mass Effect. There's a great concept under this.
Yeah.
Can they deliver on it? Number 2, yes, they fucking can apparently. Broho, great game, like such a good game. And then the decline sets in because they start doing them yearly and they start fatiguing the team behind them.
That's interesting that you bring up Mass Effect because like it almost does follow Mass Effect except for number 2 and 3. Like
except
the descent started
Mass Effect
earlier.
sucks after 1.
Yeah, the descent started early.
Like Mass Effect 1 promises a universe that never gets delivered on. Assassin's Creed 1 promises a universe that almost doesn't get delivered on, and then 2 and Broho deliver on most of it.
And then we get 3, which.
So you can see what they were trying to do with 3, right? But the problem that they faced with 3, and this is where the rot started to set in, they started to ignore the context of the time frame that they were in. You can't get controversial with the Americans. People still love the founding fathers, and they love to pretend that slavery doesn't exist. They love to pretend that Native Americans didn't get pushed off the land. SJW time over. But point is, he was a half Native American assassin, as if he's going to suddenly be at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. As if they're even going to let him in the goddamn building. Like, they're not even going to let him near that, right? But they Forrest Gumped him in anyway. And that was always the advantage and disadvantage of Assassin's Creed. Forrest Gumping the main character into these situations. And it doesn't make sense once you get to 4. Sorry, 3.
And even then, like, 3 gameplay-wise, I think it dropped a lot of balls. Like the glitchiness amount of 3 comparative to nearly all the other ones.
Yeah, because the other ones were like kind of like, haha, it's a harmless glitch. I just got to restart the mission. Some of these glitches, like, that was so painful.
Yeah.
And you could tell that they tried to go out of their way to animate Connor differently. Like he was a big thug, and and his fighting style was different. And all that matched, but then suddenly like people would like that's when the real kind of glitches and rot started to set in for that. Then we got the Breath of Fresh Air that was 4. Because that was Black Flag, which to me really isn't an Assassin's Creed game.
And also, the 3 ended the, Desmond story. So that's why you had you had the Breath of Fresh Air because Desmond's dead. Oh wait, sorry, spoilers.
Yeah, lol, spoilers.
And also like the whole ending of the world.
But they still do that though. They still like in a lot of the other ones. You're at Abstergo and you're going around their offices, or you're like they play up the video game company thing in later things. Where it's like, oh, we're trying to extract all the DNA we can out of people.
But it feels weaker. Like if we're going further from that series, if we're going even further than from 4 and stuff, the actual character outside of the game is
much weaker.
Much weaker, and you don't even really care about it.
And I didn't care enough about Desmond, but then it gets worse and worse as it goes out because you are just some random like faceless random. You know what I mean? It's always first person. It's always being spoken to as if you're a mute. Like, it's got the Zelda problem.
Yeah. Well, like, that was the series of the French, and then we had the English.
So
and
we
then,
had Unity, and Unity was the next one. And Unity's biggest issue was it was so glitchy. Like we discussed it before, but the rot really set in there because the setting is ripe for it. I mean, this is pre-revolution France. I love the setting. Playing it in French made it a better game.
And then we had also, like, pre the release of that, we had that, like, multiplayer co-op trailer. Remember the hype on that?
Yeah.
That was so hype. And then it did do it.
Yes. And this was the thing, because the Assassin's Creed multiplayer is one bit that gets overlooked. And it's a solid concept, but then they just rehashed it in every version of it, which was fine because, I mean, you were playing Assassin's Creed for the story, but then the stories got weaker. And it's not even necessarily that they didn't nail the settings, they didn't nail that. It just became, I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to chase after the guy. It's not actually a stealth game, even though it kind of purports to be. I'm going to jump off a roof and stab a guy. I'm going to play the tedious one-button counter fighting. Yeah.
So let's go even further from that. Like, Syndicate was another one that's kind of like...
It was decent, but...
It was decent, but it didn't really change much the game. 3-year gap after that, basically, I think.
It was 2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3 year gap. This is when we get the actual change of the game.
Yes.
Like, we get Origin. Origin, it doesn't even go into, like, action adventure. It changes to more almost like RPG, action RPG.
Yeah.
And the game shifts with that. And honestly, for the better or worse, is actually up to opinion. Because while I enjoy action RPGs, it's one that I felt that it didn't hit all the levels.
This was when we were coming into the age of Ubisoft do too much shit games, right?
Yeah.
So we're coming into this age where Far Cry, it's like, go liberate the forts, go liberate this, go liberate that, blah, 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 blah. We get to that issue where it's like, great, there's just too much stuff to do. None of it's building the character, none of it's building that interesting. But this was also an era of Skyrim, you know what I mean? Which is literally the definition of that kind of game.
And it kind of builds that kind of choose your own adventure, which I honestly think is like one of the worst things when you don't actually have a character to guess.
Comparing that to Red Dead Redemption, not to be that guy, but Red Dead Redemption 2 does that fantastically.
So Odyssey, it steps it up a lot more. But it's interesting to see the changes
dumps
overall.
more mechanics on, dumps on leveled up characters, which they've there's bits they've taken from The Witcher, and there's bits they've taken from God of War, and there's bits they've taken from this, and bits they've taken from that. And they put it all together into this melange, and yep, it's cool, and it's got all these cool things that you can do, but we are kind of going back into that thing where it's like, okay, well now we're doing the same kind of thing over and over again. So I wonder... I wonder if the 2 year gaps are starting to work for it, because at least we're not fatigued on it. At least it's like, well, Origins was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now this is Odyssey, and it's a thing. I mean, the other thing as well is you've got the 2 different characters, male and female. But if the dialogue doesn't change based on that, I mean, what's the point of being 2 different? It's literally just a model.
It's the same as the choose your own adventure. Like, you build the character, but in a sense, you don't actually have any control of the character at all.
Correct. Yeah.
There is no actually character development. It's all preset for you.
If you're going to do that, you need to be really delicate with it.
Yeah.
Again, not to raise too much of a point on it, Red Dead Redemption does that very, very well. I know, right? But my argument would be Assassin's Creed, it's actually in a decent spot, I think, at the moment, even if the game style doesn't necessarily appeal to me in the way that the old ones did when I first played them. Your mileage may vary, my favourite saying, but it really is that thing of the changes are for better or worse. This is more of an RPG than it's ever been before, leveling up, like a bunch of loot, like loot cycles. Reminds me a lot of what Darksiders did, where it went from Zelda to Diablo.
Yeah.
And this is going a little bit Diablo.
It's going to be interesting where it goes from here, though.